Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. All right. Yeah. Here we go, here we go.
This evening we begin a 3-week study in ethics. So the question rightly arises, what are ethics? Another word for ethics is moral philosophy. Before we jump into moral philosophy, we know that in this Theological Institute we have 2 courses. One is on ethics, another name for that is moral philosophy. And the next course that we'll be jumping into 3 weeks from today is called moral theology. Moral theology, so the question rightly arises, what's the difference between philosophy and theology? So we have an idea of what's the difference between moral philosophy and moral theology. Should we start with theology? What is theology? We've said before, theology is broken into 2 words, into 2 roots, 2 Greek roots, theo and ology. What is theology the study of? Literally, theology is the study of God. The Greek word for God is theos. Theos is God. Anytime we see ology at the end of a word, then that typically tips us off to the fact that it's the study of something. It's literally the logos in Greek. The Greek word logos means literally the word. So theology literally is the word on God, or the logic of God. What is it we can say about God? So that's theology. So this course is not a course on moral theology. That's the next course. Which means that in the next course we'll be talking about God. This course is a course in philosophy. We're not talking about God in this course. That is to say, in moral theology we can talk about what it is that God says, or what it is that people have said that God says. In philosophy it's not about God, it's about us as human beings thinking through this together. What do we think about how it is that we should act in this world? Should we allow one another in this room to kill one another? Or to lie to one another? A different thing like that. Ethics then is moral philosophy. What is philosophy and how is it different from theology? Theology then is the word on God. Philosophy, philia, is the love, is a Greek word for love, philia. And Sophia, have we heard of Sophia before? The Hagia Sophia? What is Sophia? It is wisdom. So what is philosophy the love of? Wisdom. So the ancient philosophers, what did they do? They sat down together and they thought through various issues. And they just kept asking questions. It would be like Deacon Cleophas and me sitting down for a conversation. And as we're talking, Deacon Cleophas says something, I say, well, why do you say that? And when we read stories about people like Socrates, these philosophers, that's essentially what they were doing. They were trying to figure out what the world was like. And people like Aristotle had these ideas that, wait a minute, every single person in this room is like the other people in some way. Have you thought about that? How it is that you have something in common with every single person in this room that you don't have in common with the chair, or if the dog walks into the room, there are some things that you have in common with all these people that you don't have in common with the dog. And so Aristotle tried to classify these things. What did we come up with? What definition did we come up with for the human being? That the human being is rational. So the dog can walk through the door, but the dog doesn't think like we think. The dog isn't rational. The dog knows something. The dog is hungry and knows that it needs food, so it goes out looking for food. It knows, but it doesn't know that it knows. Follow me? You know something, and you know that you know it. We refer to that as self-reflective consciousness. The human being then is different from any other animal in that way. We're rational animals. So in this course in moral philosophy, we're going to be talking about the philosophy, this love of wisdom. We'll be asking questions about the moral life, the ethical life, in English, how it is that you should live your life, and how it is that we should live our lives. Mario?
But rational comes, we have to be taught. I mean, you know, there's always a saying, la carne es débil. But somebody had to when you're a baby, you don't know. You're not rational yet. You know, you have to be taught to be rational.
Oh,
You're not
Mario,
born.
you're leading us down a road that I'm not sure we want to go down this evening, only because you're saying that that baby is somehow different from you. And I think you're on to something. The baby has not yet developed its potential
He just needs
as a rational
to
being.
do party wherever, but later you teach him not to do it there, you know.
So there's something about life that's learned, and when we come to a philosopher like Aristotle, we're going to see how it is. And he says, you know what? There's a funny thing about us, because as human beings, there's one thing that distinguishes us, and that is that we are social animals, which means that everything you know came from ideas from other people. Follow me? Everything that you know was taught you or told you by other people, or you took their ideas and brought them together to form what you know, or what you believe.
There's societies that,
Wow.
that don't know.
Let's use the example of God. If you believe in God, it's probably because someone in your life at some point told you about God. They told you that God exists. They told you what this God is like, where it is you can learn about God, or whatever they told you. And so that influenced what you think about God. If you were raised in communist China by atheist parents in an atheist society, would you have the same view on God? Probably not. You were taught something different about the human being or about God. So philosophy then is going to be us asking questions then about the moral life or about the ethical life. What is good? What should we do? How should we live our lives? And I preface all that by saying, back when we were in the seminary, in courses in pastoral counseling, when you're counseling someone, when your kids come to you and ask for advice, be careful about using the word should. You should do this, or you should do that. You ought to do this, you ought to do that. We talked about it before. Why should we avoid words like that? Because then when they do those things, what happens? They can blame us. You follow me? Well, you said I should do it. There are probably other ways to suggest that they do those same things without using words like should or ought. So when we talk about the moral life or the ethical life and what it is that we should do, we preface that by saying that we never want to should on another person. Right? We had an old priest in the seminary who used to say, when we would say, you should do such and such, you want to say, don't should on me. Right? Don't should on me. Be careful about using the words like should or ought with other people. But in this course on ethics, we're going to be talking about, okay, how should we live? If we're going to use that word, how ought we to live? So a brief introduction to what it is that ethics is. What is ethics or moral philosophy? It's a branch of philosophy that involves systematizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong conduct. Cue the sound effect. Oh, that was lovely. What's right and what's wrong, right? So essentially that's what ethics is about. How do we figure out what's right and what's wrong? Because some people in this room are going to say that it's wrong to lie, right? Jamie is going to teach her daughter, it's wrong to lie. Terry, don't ever lie. I'm not going to tell Terry that. Why? Because when someone comes knocking on the door with the gun and says, and Terry opens the door, I'm hiding back in the corner, the person says, is Father Jamie in here because I'm going to kill him? What did Jamie teach Terry? That lying is bad or wrong. And so Terry says, well, yeah, Father Jamie's right in here. Come on in. Follow me? So it raises questions for us. Is lying bad? Or is lying wrong? Or where do those ideas come from for us? Is lying always wrong? Any of us ever told a white lie? Okay, so on the one hand we're taught that lying is wrong. On the other hand we tell white lies. So obviously there's some contradiction in what it is that we believe and what it is that we're doing. So ethics then essentially delves into what's right and what's wrong so that we can start thinking through why it is that we believe certain things are right and certain things are wrong. Why is that important for us as a church? Why is it that priests study philosophy before they study theology? Yeah, it's great to talk about God, but first we want to make sure that we're thinking through these issues. Even before you talk about God, let's think through this. Let's think through why do you believe certain things are right and certain things are wrong? Maybe because they hurt people? Maybe that's a value. The reason that Terry lied to that person was so that no one would get hurt. Oh, okay. So maybe there are certain things that justify certain behaviors. Ethics then is the study of right and wrong, and how is it we came up with these ideas of what's right and what's wrong. Where does the word come from? The Greek word ethikos comes from the Greek word ethos, which means a habit or a custom. So how interesting, when we start thinking about ethics, we're thinking about habits. For instance, if we're going to use the example of telling the truth, do you as a person have a habit more of telling the truth or of not telling the truth? Follow me? So these are certain habits that we develop. Do you have the habit of being good and kind to people? Or of just minding your own business and ignoring other people? What types of habits do you have? Because our habits, what we do time after time, is what makes us who we are. Your habits make you different from anyone else in this room. Right? If I have certain habits, whatever those habits are going to be, say my own personal habits of smoking 3 packs a day and of drinking 3 packs of beer a day, those habits are going to cause me to be a certain type of person. If I don't smoke 3 packs a day and drink 3 packs of beer a day, but if I instead jog 3 miles a day and eat 3 balanced meals a day, whoa, those habits are going to lead me in another direction. So it has to do with habits. Now, when you're telling people how they should live, are you going to tell people that they should go jogging and that they should eat 3 square meals a day? Or are you going to tell people that they should smoke 3 packs a day and drink 3 packs of beer a day? We're going to tell people they should do. Essentially what's happening is other people, we learn everything that we do, we learn from other people. And those things become habits, things smoking or drinking, or jogging or eating. Those become habits, and those habits make us who we are. So ethics really is the study of our habits. Ethics and aesthetics are both sub-branches of axiology. So first let's talk about axiology, and then we'll figure out what are aesthetics. Axiology then, within philosophy, there are various branches of philosophy. So if you were to get a degree in philosophy, say, you would take different classes in philosophy, and each class would be, there would be different studies of philosophy. You could take a course in philosophy on ethics, and there are university courses on ethics, which is essentially what we're doing here. You could take a course on axiology, or you could take a course on aesthetics. Okay, let's start with aesthetics then. What do aesthetics and ethics have in common? Aesthetics, have we heard that word before? Aesthetics, the study of art or beauty, right? Aesthetics then would be, okay, when we're looking at the same painting, all of us looking at the same painting, one person looks at it and says, oh, that's a beautiful painting. The other person looks at it and says, doesn't do a lot for me, right? Different people, when they look at that, are going to see it from different perspectives. So aesthetics then is the study of art or beauty, taste. Why is it that one person's taste is different from another person's taste? But both ethics and aesthetics fall under the branch of philosophy that we call axiology, which simply means it's the philosophy that deals with value. The value that we place on certain things. In the case of ethics, it's the value that we place on actions, that certain actions are good or bad. In aesthetics, the value that we place on art or beauty. Oh, that painting is good, or that painting is bad. That painting is beautiful, that painting is ugly. Those are how we value different things. So the study of philosophy in which we value things is called axiology. What is it we value? Within that study of axiology, we have different branches like ethics. How do we value, how do we judge certain actions? Or aesthetics, how do we judge certain pieces of art? Ethics asks which actions are right or wrong in particular circumstances. Follow that? So the circumstance of Terry lying to the person at the door with the gun, that's one circumstance in which we have to judge whether that's right or wrong. Lying may not be bad in that circumstance. In other circumstances, she just did her taxes today, April the 15th. Did she lie on her taxes? No. Why? Different circumstance, right?
So lying in that way could be good or bad.
Exactly. So it seems that, okay, to follow that line of thought, lying could be good or bad depending on what? The circumstances. Think about that for a moment. That was what Janie missed in her lesson to Terry as a little girl. She told Terry, don't lie, don't lie, don't lie. Terry formed a habit of not lying, so when the person came to the door and says, Father Jamie here, she told the truth. So ethics seeks to resolve questions of human morality. Here we see that word again, the moral life or morality. By defining such concepts as good or evil, right, wrong, virtue, vice, justice, crime. What do all of these words mean? What does it mean to say that something's good or bad? How are you judging that? To say that lying is good or lying is bad in whatever circumstance. The three major studies of philosophy, three branches of ethics, the three major studies of ethics are applied ethics, normative ethics, and meta-ethics. So the question becomes, what are the differences between those three things? Let's start with applied ethics because those are the most practical thing. Applied ethics is what it is that you're obligated to do in a specific situation. And so in a specific situation, man comes to the door with a gun, asks his Father Jamie here. That's a specific situation that normative ethics would ask, what should you do in that situation? So far so good? Taking a practical situation and saying what we should do in that situation. That's normative ethics. And because normative ethics, we could apply that to various situations. If it's something at the job, right? You have the box of paper clips that are in your desk, but you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I need some paper clips at home. What happens? We take the paper clips, we take them home. Was that good or bad, and why? Normative ethics would take a look at specific situations like that. So that there's different sub-branches. One could be business ethics, what's right or wrong in business. Bioethics, issues like cloning or human genetic engineering, when we start messing with chromosomes and all those things that are inside of us. Geoethics, military ethics, think about that for a moment. When we go to war, we judge in war whether something is right or wrong. Is it wrong to kill an enemy who's aiming his or her gun at you? We don't blame a person for doing that. You follow me? That person is a hero. It's self-defense. So how interesting that on the one hand, self-defense, shooting a person is okay in one situation. Shooting a person, pulling out a gun and shooting a person in this classroom right now is not okay. Ooh, interesting. Have we thought about that before? What does it depend on? Again, whether something's right or wrong, what does it depend on? Circumstance. If you're in war and someone's aiming a gun at you, self-defense, pull the trigger. If you're sitting in a class and you're packing a gun, don't pull it out and shoot anyone. It all depends on the circumstance. Not okay. And then other fields as well of applied ethics include relational ethics, machine ethics, political ethics, public sector ethics, publication ethics. We could go on and on and on. If we had more time for this course than 3 evenings, we'd probably explore some of those. Normative ethics, so that's applied ethics where we apply it to certain situations and say what we should do, what a person should do, if we were to use that word, in a certain situation. Normative ethics, then, is how do we determine what is right or wrong? What's moral or not? What's ethical or not? How do we determine that? So applying to a certain situation is one thing. Let's step back from now and think about, well, why do we say that something is good or bad, is wrong or not? So that's normative ethics, sort of stepping back from the concrete situation. And then meta-ethics. Meta is a fancy Greek word that means above, sort of like we have the ethics and then it's sort of like this other discipline that's determining the truth value, if any, of moral propositions. Is it true that you should never lie? Those of you who've taught your kids that. Don't ever lie. Ooh. Right? What's the truth in statements like that? So meta-ethics doesn't deal with the concrete situations. Meta-ethics is more at a higher level with overarching questions. Like, is it possible for us to know what's right or what's wrong? It deals with questions like that. Is it possible for us to ever know what's right or what's wrong?